Hi guys, I am somebody here who just likes to rant and rave about really about anything. I like to talk about spirituality. I like to talk about current affairs and politics. And I am really into, discussing, the current systems that our society and everything has, and to see if it's all worthwhile, and to see if it's something that we've constructed that is even really necessary. So, that's just, I guess, what this channel is going to be about. It's just about random stuff and random ranting and ravings about things. Sometimes I get, what I feel like is really deep stuff. And then sometimes I just talk about anything, and maybe I'll even have like a drone video on or something like that, but just kind of a bunch of random stuff. So if this sounds like something that you like, then please hit like, hit subscribe, and follow my channel, and see what you guys think about it. Thanks. Well, hello everybody. Seems to be about time for me to sit here and make another video and talk to myself in the car. I've got a little bit of time here before my next appointment, so I want to talk a little bit about the systems and the structures that we have in place around us here, and just kind of ask the question of what are they and why are they there, and are they still necessary? And I do believe that a lot of the structures and stuff that we have in our life was born out of necessity. But just like anything, in history, as far as, human-made structures and systems, anywhere from buildings, if that's a structure, and that would maybe be a perfect example, is that structures over time evolve. A house built back in the 1700s is way different than a house built now. And yeah, you can still look at a house built back then and say, easily recognize it as being a house. However, the way that it's built, the systems that are in it, and even the codes that were used to build it, and just even the length of time or whatever, change over time so much. And then if we look at our social structures, and our governmental structures, our religion, all of these different types of structures and systems that we have put in place, they should also evolve the same way that buildings do. And a building, a barn built back in the 1700s is probably already crumbled and fell down, and is just really not even standing anymore. And not only that, is it's not necessarily useful, it's not necessarily efficient nowadays. A modern dairy farmer or whatever trying to run a successful farm in a little barn that was built back in the 17 or 1800s probably wouldn't work too well. So that bears the question of what are we doing today, especially in particular here in America, but you could ask this question even if you live somewhere else, of what are we doing with our governments, with our economies, even with our religions, and all of these things? Are they things that were created back in the 1700s, 1500s, 1800s? And are we trying to stick to those systems and structures that were there, and born out of necessity back then, and are we allowing them to evolve and progress with society, or are we trying to remain rigid and stick to those systems that were put in place back then? I kind of feel like America at this point in time is trying to, I guess we have a couple different movements right now. We have one movement that is trying to progress. They are trying to pull the nation in a new direction. And then we have one that is actually trying to take us backwards. And I don't mean that because I'm not trying to sit here and demonize one side or the other. I'm not trying to say that they're necessarily backwards in their thinking. What I mean is that they're trying to take us back to our points of origin of, well, let's go back and see what the people who wrote the Constitution really meant back in, in the 1770s, and see what they really meant. And let's go back to our old American values, and let's go, back in our religious beliefs. Let's go back to our foundations and stuff, which is not necessarily all bad. Either one is not necessarily all bad. I think that some people, may be trying to pull a little bit too hard. The extremes of both of those fringes are maybe trying to pull a little bit too hard, rather than just trying to recognize where we are and almost like living in the now of let your systems and everything be adapted to what is necessary now, not what was useful back in the 1700s, and not even not even looking another 100 years in the future necessarily, even though a portion of either one is not bad. I mean, looking back on some of your foundations is not a bad thing, and looking and preparing for the future is not a bad thing either. However, there's also a lot of people that just literally want to shred everything that is in existence now and try to develop something completely new. And having said that, we can take the American economy based on capitalism. Now, I don't want people to flip out on this because I'm merely posing a question here, but my question to America right now is why are we hanging on to capitalism the way that we are right now? And along with that comes so many different things of, the Constitution and all of those things, but I would ask people to think of, okay, let's take the Constitution and let's take capitalism, and even what democracy means now. What system like that, governmental system, economic system, and everything, was started even 1,000 years ago that is still alive today? You might be able to find something there, but most of the time something economical systems, status structures, and even empires and their governments and their militaries and everything that were established even 1,000 years ago, a lot of them even 500 years ago, there's a lot of them that are just simply don't exist anymore. And the ones like a nation that was around 500 years ago or whatever, take Germany or whatever, a lot of them have learned to adapt from what they were before into the present, and allowing society to move their nation forward, essentially. And a lot of the ones that were very rigid to that were, they came a certain way, a certain length of time, and then they realized, oh my goodness, this isn't the Rome or the Germany or the England or the France or whatever of, yesteryear, and try to pull, society back to their origins. The ones where that movement ended up being the most vocal, the one that was made the most noise, the one that was used the most force, and tried to do that and yank their country backwards, like I was saying, back in time, like let's go back to our past. Those nations and governments and stuff ultimately ended up dying. Rome died, and a lot of the feudal systems, of the day. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think Britain and France and Germany and all of those probably went through a time where they tried to do that, where they tried to say, hey, let's go back to, the systems that we had in place, 500 years ago or whatever. Or 200 years ago, and they might have even, some of these nations may have even had a civil war or something like that. However, ultimately ended up coming to the realization that they need to adapt and progress in order to stay alive. And I think that America is kind of at a place and point right now where this is happening, where we either need to adapt, modernize, and rethink some of our systems and structures. We may even, and I know that people are going to flip about this, but we may even need to sit down with our Constitution and with all of our rights. I mean, now we've got how many amendments in the Constitution? So the Constitution has already been changed. Okay, let's not fool ourselves on that one. And they're called amendments. That's how the government changes the Constitution. We always say, well, let's go back to the Constitution. And when we actually don't realize that we're more living from the amendments in that Constitution than we are by the actual Constitution nowadays. So we actually, in a way, aren't even so much living by the Constitution anymore. However, a lot of those amendments are based off of the translation that people have of that Constitution. So in saying that, I think that maybe America's at the point now where we are kind of at a tipping point where we either need to learn how to adapt to what the world needs right now, and we need to look beyond America to make these decisions, because I mean right now we're trying to make America great again and the rest of the world be damned. And we're finally out of that era, because I'm making this here in February of 2021, and thank God that hopefully we can move beyond that mentality, where we can focus more on a global, make the world great and not just America. But so I really feel like we're at that tipping point where we need to reassess and reevaluate where we are, because any system that was developed in history, which includes feudalism and any government economic any economy that was forged in history, normally has its time when it was born out of necessity. It was the best, the latest, the greatest thing available at the time, and then it ends up serving for its purpose, and it serves out its lifespan, and then it ultimately ends up going by the wayside. It ends up dying, and normally it either dies because it's just outlived its usefulness, or a new system that comes up, and a better system comes up in its place, and one that is better suited for the needs of the people at that point in time. And I think right now we've got two, massive movements in America where people are like, whoa, 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 they see this happening. And so there's a group that doesn't like to see it happen. So they're like trying to pull back, and they're digging in their heels, and not just trying to hold on to where they are now, but they're trying to pull back and say, no, we need to go backwards. We need to rein this thing in, and let's pull everybody back to 1776, And then there's another fringe that sees that happening. They're like, no. Society's trying to go this way. You're trying to go that way. So they're pulling this way. And there's a group out there that's, very adamant, very bitter, that is essentially saying, burn the whole thing down. And let's just start everything over. I'm not saying that we need to do that. I'm not quite to that level, because I think there is a lot of good in this nation, but we need to, in our structures and systems, but we do need to heavily evaluate which ones are still useful, which ones are actually hindering our growth, and what do we need to do. Some of the systems we may need to just completely throw out, and I don't know the answers to this, and I know that once again there's people that would flip out at me saying this, but we may even need to shed capitalism. Now, I'm not saying I want to go to socialism, because socialism is another old dinosaur that's been around for a long time, that has failed tremendously in many different areas. And socialism probably needs to go by the wayside too, right along with communism and all of that type of stuff. But rather than trying to go back and, trying to ride a dead horse, essentially, why can't we look at new things? Birth of anything, of a new flower, of a new animal, of a new human, of all of these things. There's a very beautiful thing, and if society can come up with new things, and produce new things, like a new economies, new structures of government, new status structures. I mean, maybe put away with status structures altogether, like social statuses and all that kind of stuff. Right now we've got we definitely have a class system in America. That class system needs to go away. And to be honest with you, our government, has failed miserably at dealing with those systems and trying and fixing them, and so has capitalism. Now, you might be able to argue that capitalism has many flaws, but it's the greatest thing going at the time. And that may be true. I'm not even arguing that fact, but why just settle with that when we see that there are flaws? Why are we trying to hold on to that so hard when if we would actually come together collectively as a species, as a nation, as the world or whatever, and try to come up with something better? Why can't we do that? Why are we trying to hold on to old dead things that have served their purpose? They were great in their day, but it's just simply time to let it die. Every now and then you just got to let that old horse die. He just can't plow the fields the way that he used to at one time. And I know that sounds pretty, good Lord, backwards of me, but it's true. If there's something that's just struggling to provide and struggling to really meet the needs of anything in its current condition, then you know what, you've got to try to look at something new. You're not using the same laptop that you used 10 years ago because those are now considered dinosaurs. I'm not even using the same iPhone that I had 5 years ago. So I guess we may need to, as a nation, we may need to step aside and say, what are we really trying to do here? And what, I don't like change any more than anybody else. I am a person that has been very set in my ways. I don't always do the best with change, but I have been honest with myself in my life to better myself, my family, and people around me. I have been on a journey of change in the last 4 or 5 years, and I have been intentionally open to change. Not sitting there saying that I just need to change everything, but if I have the thought come into my mind of like, hey, why am I still doing this? Why am I hanging on to this? I actually give that place. And sometimes there's a reason why I still need to hang on to it and keep it. And then there's other times when I'm like, you know what, I really don't know why I'm hanging on to this idea or whatever, or habit or whatever. And then I try to kick it and I try to better myself. And I think that America's going to need to do that, because if we think that America is going to stay the same for more than a couple hundred years, and let's go back to 1776, go back to the Constitution, let's hang on to capitalism, let's do all of these different things, and if we don't think that those systems are going to die, are not going to die, then we're just fooling ourselves. So the best thing that we can do is to be open for change. It's not comfortable. I'm not saying that I want it. Change is always scary, because you know what? You don't know what people are going to come up with as far as an economic system or whatever. But guess what? Change is going to be inevitable. Either change is going to happen when the pain of staying the same becomes too great, and it becomes easier to change. And normally you want to try to change before the pain gets that severe. Or you're going to have to change because there is literally going to be possibly a mass collapse of our current structures and systems that are in place. And if you wait till that point, that's the worst case scenario, because then that would probably mean having an absolute collapse of our economy and of our nation, and possibly the world's economy, because we are such a major player in it. However, I've also noticed another thing just over the past, definitely over the past 10 years, but maybe even less than that, maybe even over the last 5, that America is not the global leader that it once was. There used to be people who looked to America because they looked up to America as being kind of the forerunner in government, in economy, and all of these types of things, and that just doesn't seem to be true anymore. And I think that's a sign that there are a lot of nations that are progressing right now, but America is trying to dig its heels in and trying to stay the same. And we are actually actively attempting to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world by making America great again. And we are trying to take sole focus on ourselves and trying to make our economy better, and trying to improve the life here in America. And even though trying to improve your nation and trying to improve the life inside of your nation is not a bad thing, but when you do it at the expense of the rest of the world, that is a very, very bad thing. And what it has done is it has actually isolated ourselves to the point where other global leaders have stopped looking to America the way that they once did and said, you know what, well, then we're just going to look at other places and we're just going to do our own thing. And, you know, we're just kind of leave you in the dust, essentially. And if you don't think that the rest of the world can do that, then you're wrong. They can. It's kind of like the new employee coming in there, or an employee that's in a company that thinks they're just, well, you know what, if I wasn't here, the company would just sink. Well, guess what? If you go down that path too long and too far, the company is going to they're going to show you the door, and they're still going to be there in 10 or 20 years, and you're going to be sitting there wishing that you would have never had that attitude. And I kind of think that that's where America is right now. And we've kind of had a migration from, you know, being the leader, you know, let's take a school playground, I guess. We have went from being a leader of fun and games and everything in that playground and we got so comfortable leading that we have become the playground bully. And I have a feeling, just like all playground bullies, that if we remain here, we will meet our demise at some point in time. We're going to have a major wake-up call, and I believe that going through the uncomfortable change that is necessary, if we do it now, even if it's painful, we still have the ability to do that through a decent economy where people are going to be able to transition from one system into another, maybe fairly well. But if you wait until that pain is too great to where you're like, oh my God, we definitely have to do something right now because 30% of Americans are unemployed or whatever. If you wait to that point, then you might see a collapse. And that would not be good. And definitely would not be good if we go the way of the old Soviet Union, you know, or any other nation that collapsed, you know, Rome or whatever it would be. It normally has a lot of turmoil when you do something like that. So anyways, I think that that's something that I was thinking about, that I just wanted to throw out there. What are we holding on to, and is it really necessary? And why are we holding on to it? You know, I mean, let's think about that, really. I mean, are we just holding on to it for the sake of tradition, for the sake of nostalgia, or because we have been taught that we need to, but were we necessarily taught the right thing? And some people may think, well, we've got this lifestyle, you've got your quaint lifestyle, your quaint home, you know, maybe you've got yourself a little hobby farm, or you've got your children and you don't want to give up that lifestyle. Well, nobody said that you have to give that up. You can still have all of those things, but you can sit there and put your thinking caps on and, you know, and kind of come around the table and you know, huddle around the fire there and really try to come up with something new. And I think that maybe society needs to start doing that, probably globally, but I definitely know, or I firmly believe that America definitely needs to do that. So anyways, that's all for me today. Have a good one.